Hey there folks, it's me, TheTacticalBrit, and something that's been playing on my mind recently is what is going to be next for Battlefield 5. Now we're talking about a game here who released a very successful Pacific DLC, something that is still ongoing. We have brand new weapons coming, we also have the brand new map in December, and it's been rumoured that we will have one more in the early 2020 period. But we know Battlefield 5 is lasting for a couple of years now, and rather than talking just about content, because I think it's safe to say a lot of us would like to see things like the Eastern Front, would like to see things like the Fall of Berlin, I think it's around about time we start talking about key areas that Battlefield 5 really needs to improve, like things that just fundamentally need to change. And some of these are just going to be opinions, so feel free to disagree with me in the comment section below. We can start a little discussion on it, but ultimately I do feel as though there are some things that I would like to change about this game in order to put it in a better space. Now, I think a lot of this does come from my playing of Modern Warfare recently. Now, that's not to say that I think one is superior than the other, or there is any real kind of competition between these two games, but ultimately for me, I think it's more a case of Modern Warfare has shown me some things that I think make sense, and Battlefield has shown me some things that I think make sense. And with that in mind, I feel as though having that kind of alternate FPS experience, as well as games like Squad, for example, which is the milsim game, have really opened my eyes a bit as to what I'd like to see changed in Battlefield 5 in order for me to really feel invested in the long run. So let's start with movement. Now this is something that I feel needs a change, and I don't know how to really describe what exactly needs fixing, but going to a game like Modern Warfare, then coming back to a game like Battlefield, or even something like Apex Legends, you really start to feel how unresponsive Battlefield 5 can sometimes feel when you're playing it. Now, I genuinely would not be able to point to a single symptom or cause for all of this. I just feel as though somewhere along the line, in terms of the way that the game has been designed, something's come up in this department. And I think if you have played Modern Warfare, or you have played Apex Legends, you'll really understand just how sluggish Battlefield 5 can feel, and it's really off-putting in a lot of places. I think, you know, whether it's to do with controller dead zones, response curves, I'm not entirely sure, but even on keyboard and mouse it still doesn't feel as snappy and fluid. So responsiveness and movement in general for me I think is something that is vitally important. I think it's something that's become obvious now that other games have became available, and I'd also like to see some animation changes. I feel as though a lot of us are getting sick of seeing, you know, dead bodies fidgeting on the ground and causing us to, you know, instantly look over there. There's just a lot of things in Battlefield 5 in terms of movement that I think are slowly holding the game back in places that perhaps they didn't realize before. Now, I'm not trying to say that there is objectively a gold standard for how responsive a game should feel. The issue is rather that when you go from a game like that to playing Battlefield 5, and it feels so different and kind of off-putting in some cases, you don't really feel the incentive to stay. And I think this is definitely something that's more probable and more available on console, less so on PC, but I still think it's something that universally is an issue that the game needs to address. And speaking of long-standing issues, well, tanks, vehicles in general, if I'm honest. Honestly, I think it's one of the biggest step backs in Battlefield 5 that I've noticed in the game for quite a while. And, well, tanks just feel awful. There doesn't seem to be, to me at least, any major distinction between the light, medium, and heavy tanks in some scenarios. It seems to be relatively random how damage is distributed. It feels as though tanks are clunky. It feels as though they're very weak in most situations, and their single infantry in most scenarios can take out a tank by themselves. I think it's something that's just downright disappointing in Battlefield 5, especially considering how well tanks were handled to some degree in Battlefield 4. There seems to be this sort of constant push away from vehicular warfare. You know, the way the sort of terrain deforms itself, the way, you know, your tank gets stuck on things, the way it just can't traverse stuff, the way it just can't shoot at stuff, the slowness of turret rotation, it all very much combines to make it a very mediocre to almost unplayable experience in some scenarios, and I think that's something that desperately needs working on. And hey, on that continuing trend, it's no surprise that MMGs and anti-material rifles need to come into this. This is genuinely something that just doesn't make sense in the game. Now in Battlefield 5, I think you can say that most guns feel and make sense because, well, you know, you shoot an assault rifle, you shoot a rifle or an SMG, and you have a real understanding that it's going to take a level of accuracy in order to beat your opponent. Well, that's simply not the case with MMGs or sniper rifles to a certain degree, or namely anti-material rifles. I don't think snipers are necessarily a huge issue to some degree. But the big issue for me is that we're looking at a bracket of weapons here in terms of anti-material and MMGs, where you literally just point and click. You literally lay down L1, R1, or L2, R2, or whatever the hell you're using to aim and shoot, and that's it. That's it. See you later. You know, it doesn't matter what you do in these situations. As somebody who plays relatively aggressively, I think I can say 9 times out of 10, if I see an MMG, it's a wrap for me. It doesn't matter whether or not I've killed the guy. It doesn't matter whether or not I get 1 or 2 headshots. It just doesn't matter, because one click from an anti-material rifle or one quick burst from an MMG, and that's it. The game's basically over for me. I'm gonna die, and that's the state of affairs. And I don't think any weapon should be encouraging prone gameplay. I don't think people should be encouraged to wait around and prone. And that's not to discredit anybody who uses those weapons. I think they're in the game, so why the hell not? I do it all the time myself. But I think the issue with it is it encourages people to be prone, it encourages people to stay in places and positions and camp, and it encourages people to get really cheap and easy kills. Now, that's not to say that MMGs and anti-material rifles are the most used weapons. In fact, I'd say it's mostly MMGs that are the major culprit. But regardless of their minimal use, even when you get killed, it just doesn't feel right. It feels like you've been cheated in a lot of ways. And I think that's one thing that Battlefield has done very well at in the past, is that you feel like your engagements mattered and you feel like you had a chance. That's completely gone in this game because of MMGs and anti-material rifles. It seems to be that the game is very much skill-based orientated and focuses on aim and accuracy and positioning, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, screw you, here are these one-shot things, and best of luck to you, really. I'd like to see that kind of stuff removed from the game, or at least redesigned pretty drastically in order to make it fit in, because we've never had this as an issue before, and I kind of hope we don't ever have to see it again as an issue in the future. Other than that, I don't think there really is much. I'd like to see some graphical changes and certainly a big bump on performance, but for the most part, it's really not that bad a game at the moment. I think they've made some really great strides in order to improve Battlefield 5, and I'm excited to see what they do in the future. But anywho, folks, that's about it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next one.